The Orpah syndrome. What syndrome?
Orpah syndrome.
The Orpah syndrome. Are you an Orpah or are you an Elisha? Ruth chapter 1 verse 8. See?
When Naomi heard in Moab that Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. With her two daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out the road she would have taken them back to the land of Judah. Then Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another husband." Then she kissed them goodbye, and they wept aloud. And she said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who would become your husband? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there is still hope for me, even if I have a husband tonight and when I give birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand had turned against me." And at this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her.
Okay. 8th verse, both the daughter-in-law set out towards Bethlehem. Correct?
Yes,
ஆனா ஒரு பர்டிகுலர் பாயிண்ட்ல when Naomi keeps on persuading, saying go back, go back, go back, go back ன்னு சொல்லும்போது 10th வசனம் வாசி.
and said to her, "We will go back with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who would become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there is still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and they gave birth to sons, would you wait?"
14th verse.
14. At this they wept aloud again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her.
Orpah was able to be convinced by Naomi that என் கூட வந்தா உனக்கு ஃபியூச்சர் இல்லை, என் கூட வந்தா லைஃப் இல்லை. And listening to that, Orpah gave in, though she had the desire to follow mother-in-law. The desire was not so passionate to the point of persuading against all odds. கொஞ்சம் டிஸ்கம்ஃபர்ட் வந்த உடனே, கொஞ்சம் இவ இல்லை உனக்கு என் கூட வந்தீங்கன்னா ஃபியூச்சர் இல்லை அப்படி சொன்ன உடனே it was easy to convince Orpah, but Ruth was not able to be convinced. She said, no, nothing doing, I will come to you, I will come with you. In the Orpah syndrome, which is what I called Orpah syndrome, where you are passionate, you want to do something, but you don't want to go the full distance. When some stumbling block comes, you back off and you say, okay, I'm happy where I am. There were 2 Kings chapter 2, 1 to 6 vasi.
Verse 6 from there. Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed over
என்ன
on dry
வாசிக்கிற?
ground. 2 Kings chapter
2
2.
Kings
Chapter 2.
verse 1 ல இருந்து வாசி.
Okay, na. Okay. From verse 1, when the Lord was about to take Elijah up to heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets at the Bethel came out to Elisha and asked, "Do you know what the Lord is going to take you? Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha replied. "So be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. The company of prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha and asked him, "Do you know what the Lord is going to? Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," he replied. "So be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, the Lord has sent me to Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and you live, I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left, and two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me what I can do for you before I am taken from you." "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and the horsemen of Israel." And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment and tore it in two. Elisha then picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him and went back and stood on the bank of Jordan. He took the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and struck the water with it. "Where now is the Lord?"
சரி சரி இப்ப இந்த ஆல்பாவுக்கும் எலைசா பேசேஜ்லயும் என்ன வித்தியாசம் பாக்குறீங்க? Even Orpha situation, progressively the mother-in-law says, don't come, don't come. First she continues, and later at one point she stops, gets convinced by the mother-in-law to go back. But Ruth was not able to be convinced. எலைசா கிட்டயும் எலைஜா என்ன சொல்றான்? நீங்க இங்கே இருன்றான். கில்கால், பெத்தால், ஜெரிகோ, ஜார்டன். What do you see the difference between Orpha and Elisha?
After a point, they were convinced, no?
After a point they were
Convinced to go back.
So what does that tell you? What is the difference you see in both of them? உன் லைஃப்ல நீ ஒரு ஆர்ஃபாவா இருக்கிறியா இல்ல ஒரு எலைஷாவா இருக்கிறியா? ஆர்ஃபான்ற சொல்லும் போது வரணும்னு ஆசைதான். ஆனா ஒரு பர்டிகுலர் பாயிண்ட் பிரகாரமா ஒரு ரேஷனல் கன்வின்சிங் வரும்பொழுது கடைசி வரைக்கும் போகக்கூடிய கமிட்மெண்ட் இல்லை. ஆனா எலைஷா, he was so desperate that in spite of his master telling him leave me, he doesn't want to leave him. Ruth clung to her mother-in-law. So are you a person who starts off well, who continues for a while, but beyond a point you end up becoming an orphan? What God is looking for Elishas. Elisha's, who against the grain, against expectation, against everything else, is so desperate and passionate. He doesn't want to lose sight of Elijah. கடைசி வரைக்கும் நான் கடைசி வரைக்கும் நான் எடுத்துக்கொள்ளப்படும் பொழுது வரைக்கும் உன் கண்ணு என்னை பார்த்துட்டே இருந்தா, how passionate are you? How desperate are you? How easily can you get convinced? How easily do you let go? யோசிச்சு பாருங்க. மீண்டும் சந்திப்போம்.